Welcome to Arcane Echoes. I'm your host, Jessica. Tonight, we descend into the emerald mists of ancient Ireland, a land where the boundary between the known and the unfathomable is but a gossamer thread trembling in the wind. In this realm of wind-scarred cliffs and ruins cloaked in lichen, every moss-laden stone and hollow hill whispers secrets of a time when the veil between worlds was perilously thin. Here, amid the wild woods and desolate moors, the legends do not simply fade, they slumber, waiting in the oppressive silence of an ancient curse. This episode is not about stately castles or familiar ghost stories. Those tales, as seductive as they are, pale in comparison to the terror lurking in the forgotten corners of folklore. Tonight, we explore the beings that haunt Ireland's darkest legends, the twisted, ravenous, and cursed creatures that prowl the fields, ride the howling winds, and seep into the very soil of this enchanted land. Some appear as harbingers of doom, portents of an unseen calamity. Others are relentless hunters, stalking their prey under the shroud of night. And some are so beyond the ken of mortal understanding that their mere presence unravels the sanity of those who dare glimpse them. So light a candle, bolt your doors, and settle in as we journey deep into the abyss to uncover the cryptids and cursed creatures of Ireland, a realm where every whisper in the dark promises a lingering, unspoken horror. Legends murmur that when the night grows oppressively still, when even the wind dares not stir, and the air becomes a suffocating shroud, a cry emerges from the darkness. It is a sound of unearthly sorrow and bone-deep terror, one that chills the soul. This is no ordinary scream. It is neither an animal's call nor the mournful sigh of the wind. It is a dire warning, a proclamation from beyond the veil. She is the Banshee, a spectral herald whose mournful wail transcends time, marking those destined to cross over into death's cold embrace. The Banshee's visage is as mutable as the mist. To some, she appears as a luminous maiden in flowing white, her silver hair shimmering under the spectral moonlight. To others, she is a decrepit crone, cloaked in tattered gray, her visage etched with the sorrow of millennia. Regardless of her form, her presence is indelibly inscribed in the echoes of her cry, a sound that lingers long after the wind has stilled, a harbinger that cannot be ignored. For centuries, families steeped in ancient Gaelic blood, the O'Briens, the O'Connors, the O'Neills, have carried the burden of her wail. They say that when her cry echoes through the night, it is not a dirge for herself, but for the soul that is about to depart this mortal coil. Those who have heard her cry are left with a memory as indelible as grief itself. One autumn evening, when the very air held an unnatural stillness, as though the land itself was bracing for despair, the O'Brien family home was shrouded in a silence so profound it seemed to suffocate. Suddenly, a cry erupted from the shadows, a sound that defied the natural order. It was drenched in sorrow, pressing against every crevice of the home. By the time dawn broke, the family received the grim tidings. A beloved relative had departed in the night. The Banshee had come, and with her a final, irrevocable farewell. In another chilling account from the winter of 1942, the McDonough family gathered around a hearth that once provided solace against the bitter cold. Amidst shared voices and the comforting murmur of familiar stories, an oppressive silence fell, a silence so unnatural it pressed upon their very hearts. And then it came, a wail, sharp and piercing, as if borne on a wind that belonged to another realm. In that suffocating stillness, the fire seemed to shrink away from the weight of despair. By morning, they had learned that a cherished aunt had slipped quietly into death's embrace. The terror of that night silenced any further questions, leaving only the cold certainty of the omen. On a storm-lashed night along a craggy farmhouse, perched on the cliffs, an elderly farmer watched the tempest through a rain-streaked window. Amid the howling wind and pounding rain, a cry cut through the chaos, a cry so distinct, so achingly human, yet impossibly other, that it froze him in place. As jagged lightning split the sky, he caught a glimpse of her, a lone figure in tattered gray, standing at the boundary of his land. No words were needed. In that moment, he understood. By dawn, news had arrived, a neighbor had been claimed by the night. The Banshee had struck again. The Banshee is not a monster, nor a merciless executioner. She is a messenger, a spectral whisper from the liminal spaces of existence. Her mournful wail is a voice from the threshold of the beyond, a sorrowful herald of the inevitable. And if you ever find yourself listening to her cry, you will understand. She is not merely the stuff of legends or ghost stories. She is real, and she is waiting. Some beings haunt the night with sorrow, some foretell death, and then there are those who revel in chaos. Enter the Puka, one of Ireland's most elusive and capricious spirits. Neither wholly benevolent nor entirely cruel, the Puka is a force of pandemonium, a shapeshifter that dances on the edge of reality, delighting in mischief and the perilous uncertainty between fortune and folly. This creature is said to assume any form it desires, at one moment a shadowy steed with eyes burning like molten coals, at another a scruffy hound with a grin stretched unnaturally wide, or even a figure disturbingly human, yet tinged with something other. Encountering the Puka forces you into a crossroads of fate, a choice made unwillingly that may forever alter your path. It might lead you astray, twisting the road beneath your feet until familiar landscapes dissolve into alien terrain. Or it might offer you a ride, its dark, glistening form too mesmerizing to resist, only to hurl you into a ditch or plunge you into a torrent, leaving you gasping for sanity. Yet, amid the chaos, this trickster sometimes imparts cryptic wisdom. Riddles whispered in tones that both enlighten and unsettle, leaving those who listen caught between revelation and dread. On a night thick with mist that warps distances and transforms known paths into labyrinth corridors of shadow, a lone young man trudged along a desolate country lane. His breath, a fleeting wisp in the damp air, was interrupted by the sudden emergence of a spectral horse from the swirling fog. Black as pitch, its eyes glowed with an unholy silver fire, and its mane rippled as if stirred by a wind not of this world. It stood there, motionless, as if waiting for him, a silent invitation to a fate unknown. Drawn beyond his will, the young man mounted the creature. In that moment, reality convulsed. The puka's form shimmered and contorted, its limbs elongating into grotesque proportions, its breath turning the air as cold and unyielding as grave dirt. With a surge that defied nature, the beast galloped into the night, trees melding into blurred streaks, and the wind roaring in his ears. Then, as suddenly as it had begun, the ride ended in a brutal impact. He crashed into the cold earth, his senses overwhelmed by the horror of what had transpired. When he came to, the creature had vanished. No hoofprints marked the sodden ground, only the haunting echo of a misbegotten game. Across the rugged expanses of Ireland, whispers abound of the puka's mischievous forays, especially during Samhain, when the veil between worlds grows perilously thin. On certain autumn mornings, farmers awaken to find their fields ravaged by invisible hooves, the crops twisted into chaotic, impossible patterns, as if a spectral herd had danced across the land in mocking jubilation. Some claim this is mere amusement, a trick played on those who dare to believe they command nature. Others see it as a dire warning that even the most bountiful harvest ultimately bows to the wild, untamable spirits. On another fateful night, a solitary traveler made his way along a winding country road shrouded in dense fog. A chill swept over him as the sound of distant hoofbeats, first faint, then thunderously close, filled the air. Out of the murk emerged a shifting figure, sometimes a galloping horse, other times a twisted, dark silhouette of a human, its eyes ablaze like twin embers cutting through the gloom. The traveler's heart pounded as the puka toyed with him, drawing ever nearer before halting with a gaze so intense it seemed to bore into his soul. Then, as abruptly as it had appeared, the entity dissolved into the mist, leaving behind only the echo of its otherworldly hooves. The puka is no mere phantom of mischief. It is a raw, elemental force, unpredictable, untamed, and forever straddling the line between benevolence and torment. It reminds us that the world is never as steadfast as we assume, that beneath every well-trodden path lies the potential for transformation, for deception. And if one fateful night you find yourself alone on a mist-draped road and dark, shifting figure emerges from the fog, watching, waiting, and constantly changing, beware what you trust. The puka is always observing, and in its capricious games, fairness is but a forgotten myth. Not all abductions are wrought by mortal hands. In the ancient mist-wreathed hills of Ireland, where the fog slithers like spectral serpents, and the barrier between worlds wears perilously thin, a legend festers far more harrowing than any ghostly tale whispered by the wind. In these cursed lands, a night may cloak unspeakable horror. Children vanish as if swallowed by the darkness itself. Strangers with faces eerily reminiscent of loved ones creep silently into homes. And when parents meet their children's eyes, they are met not with the familiar spark of life, but with an unsettling void, a mirror reflecting something else entirely. The changelings are not mere replacements, but pale, haunted echoes of the children they usurp. The Fae, those enigmatic and cruel denizens of a parallel realm, are said to covet the purity and innocence of human youth. Their world is a labyrinth of twisted forests and echoing ruins, where beauty contorts into grotesque mockeries. With cold, calculating eyes, these creatures select their victims for reasons lost in time, perhaps for ritualistic power or to satiate an ancient hunger for what makes us human. Imagine a creature so gaunt that its bones press painfully against skin stretched tight over a skeletal frame. Its eyes, far too knowing for an infant, flicker with an eerie luminescence, betraying centuries of malevolent secrets. When it speaks, or rather, when it emits that dreadful, discordant cry, it is as if the very air shudders in terror, carrying a sound that belongs to no mortal tongue. Legends whisper that the Fae steal human children to nourish their cursed realm, leaving behind an impostor, a creature as thin and sickly as a withered branch, yet possessing an intellect that chills the soul. This being neither laughs nor sleeps, its gaze is fixed, its presence unsettling. In the right light, its features seem to twist, revealing flashes of something monstrous beneath the fragile facade of a child. And it isn't only the little ones who suffer. In the dead of night, men, women, and even the elderly can be plucked from their reality. When these stolen souls return, they are not entirely themselves. A spectral doppelganger wearing the familiar skin of a once familiar face. Desperate families, their hearts encased in terror and sorrow, have turned to perilous ancient rituals to unmask these sinister interlopers, risking everything to reclaim what was once pure. In the bitter winter of the 19th century, a small village was struck by a curse. A once vibrant child grew paler than moonlight, his limbs reduced to feeble shadows of movement, his laughter extinguished like a dying ember. His mother, gripped by a creeping dread, noticed his eyes had transformed. Now they shone with an otherworldly intelligence, as if harboring secrets not meant for human ken. Late at night, she heard him whisper in a language that seemed to warp the very fabric of the air. In their despair, the family invoked the ancient rite, a desperate dance of fire and iron that only a true human could endure. At the ritual's climax, a scream tore through the silence, a sound not meant for mortal ears, and then the child was gone. No trace remained, as if the Fae had spirited him away into a realm of eternal twilight, leaving behind only a lingering, unhealed terror. In the fog-shrouded expanses of Donegal, a wife began to notice subtle sinister changes in her husband. His voice took on a rasping quality. His movements became hauntingly alien. The warmth in his eyes drained away, replaced by a vacant, almost spectral stare. His body carried the weight of an otherworldly presence, as if something had clawed its way beneath his skin. In a final act of desperate hope, a revered fairy doctor was summoned to perform a forbidden ritual under the bleak shroud of twilight. Hours passed in suffocating silence until, with a sudden gust of wind that defied nature, the man collapsed. When he awoke, his eyes had cleared, his soul seemingly restored, but the memory of that uncanny intrusion lingered like a foul odor in the back of the mind. Some speak in hushed tones of the Fae's perverse necessity to replace a child as part of an ancient infernal bargain. In County Mayo, a young couple's joy was soon drowned in despair. Their newborn son, once a beacon of hope, began to change. His skin drained of life, his cries morphed into dissonant echoes that defied normality. His eyes grew dull, haunted by an insatiable longing. Neighbors murmured of the pale ones, ghastly entities slipping between the fabric of our world and theirs. Despite desperate measures, scattering salt at the thresholds and embedding iron beneath his cradle, the transformation could not be halted. One moonless night, the infant simply vanished. There were no signs of struggle, no remnants of forced departure, only an overwhelming sense and a chilling certainty that he had never truly been theirs. The legend of the changelings is far from a mere myth. It encapsulates our deepest primal terror that in the blink of an eye, what we hold dear can be irreversibly stolen, replaced by a thing that wears our own face but harbors a soul from the darkest abyss. It is a constant reminder that the world is precarious, that the veneer of normality is thin and easily shattered. And sometimes, when you look into the eyes of someone you think you may find yourself staring back into a void that whispers of another realm, where unspeakable horrors reign. Few figures in Irish folklore evoke as much eerie fascination as the leprechaun. Once a cunning and cryptic fae of the old world, this small bearded trickster, clad in green and forever associated with elusive gold, has been tamed into a modern caricature. But before he became a benign symbol of luck and mischief, the leprechaun was something altogether more sinister. A creature as ancient as the hills, both clever and unnerving, whose very presence unsettles the soul. To cross paths with a leprechaun is never a blessing, it is a trial. These elusive guardians do not merely hoard treasure, they safeguard secrets older than the land itself, the deep magic pulsing beneath weathered stones and ancient ruins. They dwell in the forgotten hollows of dense forests, the silent shadows of barren hills, and the sacred stone circles that have witnessed countless ages. Encountering one is a rare, fateful event, a moment when reality blurs and you are forced to reckon with forces far beyond mortal ken. The leprechaun delights in turning the tables on those who dare to challenge him. His tricks are not simple pranks, but devious tests of wit and will. Many who attempt to outsmart him soon learn that the cleverest fae always have the last laugh, leaving their challengers chasing illusions and haunted by the bitter taste of defeat. On a moonlit night, an elderly man wandered near the crumbling ruins of an ancient stone wall, the moist air heavy with the scent of earth and decay. As he rounded a bend, a tiny, darting figure flitted past him, a glimpse of green that vanished as quickly as it had appeared. In its wake, a trail of glittering dust shimmered under the ghostly glow of the moon, a spectral promise of treasure that always eluded capture. Weeks later, his sleep was tormented by visions of golden light, a tantalizing glimmer forever slipping beyond his grasp. Some whispered that he had been marked by the Fae to chase a treasure that was never meant for mortal hands. A band of hikers paused in awe before a weathered stone circle deep in Kerry countryside. The air around them seemed to pulse with an ancient, silent energy, as if the very earth was holding its breath. Then one of them saw it, a diminutive figure barely 2 feet tall, standing motionless at the circle's edge. Its eyes shone with a knowing, almost predatory glimmer, and its faint smile hinted at dark secrets. In an instant, the figure evaporated into the surrounding gloom, leaving behind no footprints or rustling leaves, only an overwhelming sense of being watched by a being not to be trifled with. The hikers fled, haunted by the chilling realization that some guardians are better left undisturbed. At dusk, as a woman tended her garden beneath the deepening twilight, a cold, inexplicable chill swept over her. The sun had just vanished, and the world was awash in that eerie in-between light where day and night merge. From beyond her garden's hedge came a soft, lilting whisper, words strung together in a riddle too cryptic to decipher. She turned, half expecting to see a small, impish form crouched in the shadows, yet nothing moved save for the hedge swaying in an unnatural stillness. That night, her dreams were invaded by twisting roots and flickers of golden light hidden beneath the soil, a vision that blurred the line between warning and enchantment. After that night, she never walked in her garden after dark, forever weary of the unseen eyes that might be watching. Perhaps the most infamous tale of leprechaun trickery comes from a remote Irish farm. A resourceful farmer, convinced he could outsmart the Fae, managed to snare a leprechaun amid his fields of tall, whispering grass. The creature, trapped and writhing in the farmer's grip, pleaded for freedom in a voice that was both pitiful and mocking. Bound by ancient lore, the farmer demanded that the leprechaun reveal his secrets of hidden gold. Under duress, the Fae grudgingly pointed to a solitary ragwort plant, its petals trembling in the breeze. Triumphant, the farmer tied a red ribbon around the plant and raced into town to retrieve his shovel. But when he returned, his fields were transformed. Every plant, every blade of grass was marked with red ribbons, an impossible maze of symbols. The treasure remained forever hidden, and in the haunting winds that swept through the fields, the faint echo of laughter, light, cruel, and unrepentant, reminded him that the leprechaun had won, leaving him with nothing but a lesson in the price of greed. Leprechauns are not mere symbols of fortune. They are ancient keepers of secret magic, mischievous yet formidable, punishing hubris and greed with a cunning smile and an unbreakable riddle. They embody the warning that some treasures and some truths are meant to remain hidden. And if you ever find yourself face to face with one of these elusive beings, be careful what you wish for. For in the labyrinth of their tricks, the leprechaun always holds the final, mocking laugh, a reminder that in the realm of the Fae, nothing is ever as it seems. Some omens whisper in the dead of the night, some mourn with sorrowful lamentations. And then there are those who ride unbidden into the darkness, heralding death with every echoing hoofbeat. There is no warning, no escape, only the relentless pounding of hooves on ancient stone, and the cold certainty that your name has been inscribed in fate. This is the legend of the Dullahan, the headless rider whose fearsome presence has haunted Ireland for centuries. Cloaked in black, he rides a monstrous skeletal steed that seems wrought from the very bones of the earth. Sparks fly as the beast's hooves strike the ground, each step a death knell resonating through the night. In his gloved hand, concealed beneath his tattered cloak, he cradles his own severed head, a ghastly pallid visage with flesh drawn tight over bone. His mouth twists into a sinister grin, and its eyes burn like molten coals, eternally scanning the darkness for the next soul to claim. The Dullahan is no ordinary specter. He is the relentless reaper, the final messenger of mortality. Doors hold no barrier against him, locks are mere trinkets. Walls crumble in his wake. When his presence is foretold, his head is raised high, and he intones the doomed name in a voice that reverberates through the very fabric of your being. And when he speaks, there is no room for pleading or bargaining. Death is sealed with that single fateful utterance. On a fog-choked evening, a lone traveler navigated a narrow country lane, the mist curling about his feet like grasping spectral tendrils. The air was unnervingly silent until, in the distance, the rhythmic clatter of hooves cut through the gloom. He turned, heart pounding, and beheld a rider shrouded in darkness, a figure clad in tattered black, completely headless, astride a steed whose eyes glowed with an unholy light. In a grotesque gesture, the rider lifted his severed head, its twisted grin locking onto the traveler's soul. Terror-stricken, the man fled blindly through the night, the sound of relentless hoofbeats pursuing him until he reached safety. By dawn, grim news spread. A soul had been claimed, though not the traveler's. The Dullahan's hunt had already begun. One late, starless night, a couple found themselves on an isolated stretch of road, the world beyond their windshield swallowed by darkness. The hum of their engine was the only sound until the oppressive air grew thick with unnameable dread. Suddenly, headlights revealed a surreal sight, a horse galloping effortlessly beside their car in an otherwise barren landscape, and atop it, a rider draped in ebony, clutching the reins with one hand and with the other holding aloft his own severed head. The ghastly face, its grin widening into a macabre smile, fixed its gaze upon the couple, burning into their hearts with a silent promise of doom. In the blink of an eye, the apparition vanished into the night, yet its haunting presence lingered, and soon an unexpected death rattled the community, for the Dullahan had spoken a name. The Dullahan does not pursue his victims for sport. He is neither capricious nor swayed by reason. Bribes, pleas, or frantic cries offer no solace when he rides forth. If you should ever hear the dreadful rhythm of the hooves, if you catch a glimpse of that headless figure gliding through the darkness, know this: your destiny has been sealed. When the Dullahan's gaze falls upon you, there is no turning back. The Dullahan is not merely a myth whispered by fearful hearts. He is a stark warning, a relentless reminder that death spares no one. When the rider comes, fate is unyielding. No matter how fast you run, how deep you hide, or how loudly you cry, the inevitable claim of mortality awaits. For the Dullahan rides for all of us, and when your time is nigh, the echo of his hoofs will herald the end. Vampires. The very word summons images of refined aristocrats cloaked in velvet, seducing from shadowed corners of Gothic castles. But Ireland's vampire is something altogether more ancient and far more horrifying. He is the Abhartach, a revenant from a blood-soaked past, a creature of relentless hunger and primeval terror, suspended between life and death. The legend of the Abhartach begins not in the realm of the undead, but in the brutal clamor of ancient warfare. In an age of warring clans and bloodied thrones, there was a chieftain whose cruelty knew no bounds, a tyrant so feared that even his own kin trembled at his name. His reign was carved in terror, his ambition insatiable, yet, as with all tyrants, death finally came for him, or so it should have. But the grave could not contain him. The very night after his burial, he clawed his way from the earth, a twisted, malformed specter with ashen, sunken flesh and eyes alight with unholy hunger. No longer content with a thirst for power, his desire had curdled into a singular, unyielding craving: blood. With every ragged breath, he demanded tribute in the currency of life itself, forcing his people once more to bow not before a fallen king, but before a monster born of vengeance and despair. They killed him again and again in desperate attempts to silence his curse. Yet, each time the Abhartach rose, an unending nightmare incarnate. Ancient texts whisper that only a tomb carved deep into the earth, lined with thorn and sealed beneath a massive slab of stone, could imprison him. So they interred him once more, marking the land with a boulder to ensure his eternal confinement. But time is a fickle master, and the earth shifts. The dead, it seems, do not always remain at rest. In the desolate ruins of a crumbling castle, villagers speak of a shifting shadow that roams the corridors. Those brave enough to step inside are met by a bone-deep chill, a cold that sinks into the marrow and leaves no warmth behind. Faint whispers echo along the walls, urgent murmurs urging them to flee, as unseen eyes watch them from every darkened corner. Something stirs within those haunted walls, a presence that wanders endlessly, searching and hungering. In a quiet village, a farmer awoke to a horror beyond imagining. His prized cattle were found lifeless, drained of every drop of blood. There were no signs of a struggle, only two tiny puncture marks on their necks, silent testimony to a predator's visit. Locals later recalled a gaunt, spectral figure at the edge of the fields, pale as death, watching and waiting in the gathering gloom. By the next dawn, the livestock were gone forever, and the farmer was left to bear the crushing weight of an unspoken curse. A lone night watchman tasked with guarding an abandoned manor found himself ensnared in a creeping dread one fateful night. As he paced the empty halls, the shadows lengthened, and every candle flame wavered as though in fear. A cold pressure, like the grip of a long-dead hand, brushed against his back. He turned swiftly, only to find nothing but the oppressive dark. Yet, by morning, a searing pain had taken root in his arm. When he rolled up his sleeve, there it was, a deep, jagged bite mark, stark and unmistakable. No other soul had trod those halls that night, yet something had fed, leaving behind a scar as a ghastly signature. The Abhartach is not an elegant, seductive vampire of modern tales. He is a predator devoid of charm, unbound by convention. He does not wait for consent or knock upon your door. He invades without warning. His hunger is fierce, unrelenting, and devoid of pity. In his presence, there is no beauty, no romance, only the raw, primal terror of an ancient curse that refuses to die. Some say the Abhartach lies buried, locked away, beneath a boulder so vast that none would dare disturb it. But the earth is never static, and hunger is an ever-patient force. Should you ever feel an unnatural chill brush past you in the dead of night, or awaken with an inexplicable ache pulsing through your veins, remember this warning. Pray that the grave still holds its unholy secret, for some curses are eternal, and some monsters are never meant to remain buried. Throughout centuries of folklore, the people of Ireland developed a host of superstitions and protective measures to shield themselves from these malevolent forces. These practices were woven into everyday life, a blend of practical remedies and spiritual invocations designed to ward off evil. For example, iron was regarded as a powerful repellent against the fae and malevolent spirits. Households often kept a small piece of iron or a nail near the door, believing it would deflect unwanted supernatural attention. Salt, too, was more than just a seasoning. It was scattered at the doorways and windows to form protective barriers against the unseen. The horseshoe, hung above doorways, was considered a lucky charm that kept misfortune at bay. Religious symbols also played a significant role. The cross, whether worn as an amulet or displayed in the home, served as a potent safeguard against evil. Reciting prayers and invoking the names of revered saints, particularly Saint Bridget or Saint Patrick, were believed to call upon the divine protection and repel darkness. Additionally, folklore advised caution against certain times. Observing seasonal precautions such as staying indoors on Samhain when the veil between worlds was believed to be thin helped minimize encounters with these cryptids. Such practices, passed down through generations, offer a measure of comfort against a mysterious and unpredictable world. If you've experienced something strange or have a personal story about these mysterious beings, I'd love to hear from you. Please leave a comment on this video or send me an email at arcaneechoespodcast@gmail.com. Your story might even find its way into a future episode. As our journey through the shadowed legends of ancient Ireland draws to a close, we are left with more than a collection of eerie tales. We carry with us the lingering presence of a world where myth and nightmare entwine. In this realm, the boundary between the natural and the supernatural is as fragile as a whispered secret, and every legend is a door to the past. Tonight, we have confronted the wailing banshee, the mischievous puka, the cunning leprechaun, the relentless Dullahan, and the insatiable Abhartach. Each creature, steeped in the mists of history and raw human emotion, challenges our understanding of life, death, and the forces that dwell beyond the veil. Are they the fragmented memories of a wild, unpredictable nature, or ominous warnings from an age when the very earth was alive with ancient magic? Thank you for venturing into these haunted corners of Irish folklore with me. Until our next descent into darkness, stay curious, tread carefully, and remember, the night is full of secrets waiting to be unearthed.